As the Predators get ready for their home opener tonight, we want to know what you guys thought about the Preds this season. We put out fan polls asking questions about some of the biggest hot topics going into the Predators season, and we got those results for you. A couple of them are pretty interesting. We'll break them down today on the Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Predators your first listen of the day. Every single day, we are your free Predators podcast. You can listen to us daily wherever you get your podcast. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer and editor at ontheforecheck.com, and I have a partner in crime I'm happy to see after a little 3-day sabbatical.
I know. It's so good to see you and your beard back. Yeah. I forgot Nick had a beard. It was a whole thing. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am a writer and editor at InsideThePreds.com.
I have had this beard for literally the entirety of the podcast that we've done together.
Do you have new lighting? Something is different.
We've been doing this. The Locked On Networks put this out yesterday. We've been doing this for 1 year now. We recently had a 1 year anniversary.
That's
and
right.
I think I've only been very clean shaven or just stubble for maybe 1 week of that because I shaved for my Halloween costume last year.
Okay.
So I'm curious where this is coming from.
I don't know, but let's not focus on that so much as I think the 1 year anniversary is paper. So here, I'm going to mail you this Post-it note to celebrate our anniversary.
There we go. Hey, I got a couple for you too.
See? Oh, yours is purple. That's lovely. See, yeah. Look at us celebrating our Locked On anniversary with the traditional paper Post-it note gift.
Yeah, I didn't bring the Fireball, but I would toast to you as well because it's got a paper label, right?
It does. I think it does.
Yeah, that counts. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, we'll save that for something amazing that's going to happen this season. There's always going to be Fireball moments. I can just feel it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of celebrating big moments, tonight is definitely a reason to celebrate because the Nashville Predators have their home opener, or probably their regular season opener if you ask any NHL advertising marketing campaign thing that's been going on. The Predators play the Dallas Stars at home at Bridgestone Arena, 7:00 puck drop as usual. And I think very, very happy to see the Preds back on home ice, Bridgestone Arena. Last time they saw the Preds didn't work out so well. I think they'll be looking for any sort of reason to cheer this time.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to go better than it did the last time the Predators were on the ice at Bridgestone Arena. And we don't even need to revisit that because it's early and painful. But yeah, no, and I think a home opener too against the Dallas Stars, I think is always a good mix for a ruckus crowd. Just there's a lot of recent history with the Stars that definitely elevates kind of the drama and just the desire for the crowd to see the Predators absolutely demolish the opponent. So Bridgestone is going to be amazing tonight. And I don't know if you saw, they've got all these new food items there. They have a new photo booth where you can select getting your picture taken with like pseudo computerized Predators. It's going to be amazing. So, it makes me think maybe I need to get a ticket for tonight and not wait.
I missed this. When I was gone. But yeah, what was your favorite food item?
I'm the worst person to ask that of because I'm a creature of habit and I don't like unique things. So I'm a second floor hot dog and French fries girl. There's a place on the second floor I go for my hot dogs and French fries. So, but you should ask somebody who's super classy, who goes to the Preds games. I am not her.
You're gonna have some T-bone steak one of these games where I go to visit you.
No, I'll be second floor hot dog and French fries, and then after the second intermission, we're gonna get crazy and we're gonna get a box of M&Ms because that's how I know how to do a Predators game, my friend. I will lead you through the
Same.
magic.
I like the M&M's idea. I go funnel cake for like the second intermission meal.
Yeah. You know what I can't find? Every so often I'll go wild and I'll get one of the grilled cheeses from the first floor because those are amazing. But they used to have Dunkin' Donuts where you could buy the little donut holes. And that one I haven't seen in the preseason on the first floor. So I may have to go up to the third floor because that's like when you're really, really excited, you get yourself a cup of donut holes.
Yeah, that's a classic snack. I don't know. I feel
Yeah.
like that would have been more like a Prague, like wake up in the afternoon and watch that kind of snack.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot that's happened that we haven't exactly been able to cover with each other.
True.
Some of it we'll get to each other. Obviously, the Predators coming into this off 2 straight wins in Prague. Dallas Stars, this is their season opener. So there's kind of a lot to break down here. And to your point, Ann, we love playing the Dallas Stars. Let's not forget, they play 2 days from now again.
Yes.
Dallas. So it almost feels like this is kind of going to have a little bit of like that playoff mentality kind of game, not, a winner go home sort of thing, but playoff mentality as in like get super familiar and super frustrated with some of the guys you're playing with. I expect probably you're going to see physical presence kind of dominate here early.
Yeah. And whatever does not feel great in this game tonight is going to carry over into Saturday night. So it's going to be I think it's a really interesting, fun, high drama way to open like the home opener. And then I think Saturday is in Dallas, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's good high drama. Like, way to go, NHL. They had an 8th grade girl put together the schedule and they nailed it when it comes to drama.
They nailed this one because I love opening the season with a back-to-back against the same opponent. Yeah. Later in the season, the thing I didn't like was they had the Seattle Kraken back-to-back, but both games are at Bridgestone Arena. So it's like the same game twice in like a 3-day span. I think they play like a Thursday and a Saturday, like at home against the Kraken both times. And that's the back-to-back I hate.
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of things for Dallas. Obviously, new coach Pete DeBoer coming in, hold for laughs. That's a very different look for the Dallas Stars this year than they have in years past. Kind of the big headline coming out of camp is, at least to start, it doesn't look like Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn are going to be together. Remember, that was kind of the big power line for the Dallas Stars over the past decade or so. Tyler Seguin centering the center line, Jamie Benn playing winger on the third, next to Wyatt Johnston and Dennis Gurianov. So very interesting changes for the Dallas Stars this year. And of course, on the back end, no John Klingberg. There's definitely some questions about their depth back there. In goal, though, that seems like that is where the X factor is going to be.
Yes.
At least in this game, and is Jake Ottinger. Big contract that he got. He was one of the best goalies in the league last year. Really burst onto the scene in that Calgary Flames series just because, the Flames should have absolutely stonewalled the Dallas Stars.
Yes.
And Jake Ottinger came back and made that a 7-game series, almost stole the series from them. The big question mark, and just like Yossi Saros was for us last year, is can Jake Ottinger do that again consistently year in and year out?
Yeah, and I really do think you're right. I think Jake Ottinger for the rest of the season is going to be the X factor for the Dallas Stars, because very much like Yossi Saros, he is a goaltender who's going to steal wins for you. If they can keep him healthy, I think he is going to make the Dallas Stars probably significantly better than maybe what they could be. I'm trying to find a nice way to say it. It's hard to try to say it in a nice way about the Dallas Stars.
You're saying they kind of suck, but their goalie's good.
And look, I can say that because I think the Nashville Predators have kind of danced in that water themselves. They've dipped their toe in that water recently. But, Jake Ottinger, look, this is a whole lot of goalie to love. He's a young guy, but he is 6'5", 220. Like, he is the walrus from the Geico commercial that just sits in the net. It just sits in net. I mean, he's just huge. But it's not just size. I mean, this is a goaltender. He's so talented, and definitely something where he lowers the confidence level of Nashville Predators fans just by taking the ice tonight. 913 save percentage last year, 2.46 goals against allowed. And like you said, I mean, he is not afraid of big moments. He showed up for the Dallas Stars in that playoff series that the Predators should have been in against the Calgary Flames. But again, we're not going to look back. Looking forward today, friends. So yeah, Ottinger for me is the player to definitely watch when it comes to Dallas and how this game turns out. He's going to be kind of the X factor for the Stars.
Yeah. So that game is 7:00 puck drop Central Time tonight, 8:00 if you're watching in the Eastern Time Zone like me. And of course, on tomorrow's Locked On Predators, we'll have our normal game recap featuring one word to describe the game and all the major takeaways. So that's coming up tomorrow. But hey, we still have a lot to get to previewing this game. There's some big storylines surrounding the Nashville Predators this season as they get their home opener underway. We wanted to ask your opinion. You've heard us blab enough, but we wanted to get your opinion. So we put out some fan polls this week. Couple of interesting answers, things that neither me or Ann really got behind this year. So we're going to go through the polls and come up with some of our more surprising responses in just a little bit. First, I want to mention today's show brought to you by BetOnline.net. That is your number one source for betting this wonderful hockey season. You can find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, in-depth articles, and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, live betting, up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. See if Preds are going to hit the over-under tonight, what the money line is, who's going to score the first goal, all of that good stuff. You can find that on BetOnline. And it's also the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your other favorite games and events. Major League Baseball playoffs in full swing. We got college and pro football, plenty of great games this weekend. They even have stuff on MMA, boxing, golf, and the upcoming NBA season. So be sure to head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Ann. So as we were discussing this week, we wanted to get the fans' opinion. You and I blabber on a lot about our takes on some of the major Preds storylines going into the season. I feel like you and I have been talking about it for, about 5 months? Yeah, whenever the last Predators game ended. So we kind of wanted to get your take on it. So we created some polls, and we are going to go through the results. The first one, Ann, the first question I asked, where do you see the Predators finishing in the Central this year? The choices were surprise champs, respectable second or third, getting in as a wild card, or no playoffs, much sadness. The overwhelming winner with 67.5% of the poll, respectable second or third.
Yeah, I feel good about this. I think for the Nashville Predators, where they're at right now, where they've been, and just the problems they've addressed and the way the Central stacks up going into this season, I think that's a really good. I think that's a good take. I think it's a little, it shows a little bit of optimism in the Nashville Predators fan base, which is not perhaps a character quality this fan base is necessarily known for. I do want to address the 14% who said surprise champs, baby, because I feel like
you got to go all in if you're going to do this.
I mean, I feel like that's going to hurt down the line. So I don't know if you caught any of the Blackhawks Avalanche game last night. And again, it was the Blackhawks against the Avalanche. I saw 2 periods and that was plenty for me to go, oh, okay. Yep. This is going to be the Avalanche are going to be good again, folks. But I feel good about a respectable second or third. Don't you?
I think that is probably what I would be the most okay with. Like, that is what I would say. Okay, the season was success. I think even if they make the playoffs as a wild card,
Mhm.
if they make it as a wild card, I would look at it and say, this kind of felt like last year. It kind of felt like there was some underachieving going on. The
Yeah.
Central Division is tough. We've talked about it before. It seems like there's Colorado, and then there's just kind of, the tier of Nashville, St. Louis, and Minnesota. We're going to get to that one in a second, too. It just
Mhm.
seems like there's kind of that hodgepodge tier of, teams that, could be much better than they were last season, but could also be a little bit worse. So it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out. But I would say second or third would be a successful year.
Mhm.
And hey, to the 14.6% of you who said surprise champs, anything can happen. Colorado could go on a slide. Nashville can get hot. So hey, let's just leave that one out there, shall we?
All right. I mean, it's on the poll, so it's open for voting, I guess. I just was kind of surprised, but hey, walk in confidence, my friends.
Yeah, so the surprise champs, that was the third biggest response. Skirt in as a wild card, 15%. That was the second highest response. Only 2% of you said no playoffs this year. So yeah, yay optimism. We're hot
Yeah,
over here. I feel like
we
we're rubbing
are.
off on people after a year, and
It only took a year, Nick. It
it's a
only
year.
took a year.
Question number 2, we asked, which Preds player do you think is most likely to
Mhm.
match or improve upon its success from last season for this coming season? The choices we gave you were Roman Yossi, Philip Forsberg, Matt Duchene, and Yossi Saros. The winner of this poll, 42.4%, Yossi Saros.
Yes, I only created so many fake accounts to vote for Matt Duchene, and clearly I did not get enough. Matt Duchene was third in this, but as I kind of watched this poll as it recorded, I thought, I can see the argument for UC Saros. I really can see the argument for Saros. I think he's just consistent. I think the UC Saros that we've seen the last couple seasons, that's just who he is. That's just how he plays. I think he is consistently really good. And I think having a backup that I don't think Lankinen's going to get a ton of starts, but having a backup that they feel like they can start if they want to rest Saros, I think it's going to help him in the end. So this one is even though it is not the vote of my heart, I would say, yeah, I like this UC Saros 42%. I don't know. How do you feel about it? Who do you think's going to have it? Who's going to have
Um,
the better year?
So this is the question about the poll that I want to kind of, I guess, follow up with people listening. And if you're voted, feel free to chime in on Twitter.
Mhm.
Was this because, you just think UC Saros is gradually improving and he's finding his stride and, he's going to be, elite goaltender year in and year out, like, Pecorine was? Or do you think that Philip Forsberg, Roman Yossi, and Matt Duchene sort of overachieved last year?
Yeah.
That to me is my question with how people
Hmm.
answered. I'm with you. I think I get UC Saros. The second highest answer with 27.3% is Philip Forsberg. And that I also agree with. In fact, that probably would have been my pick. Um,
Mhm.
I just think when you look at the numbers last year, Forsberg had 84 points, but also missed 13 games. What did it
Right. Yeah.
they
Yeah. I
wound
think
up
it was
being
13.
13 games he missed. And you look at his scoring rates were actually on pace to flirt with a 100-point season. So that tells me there's a lot more in the tank for Philip Forsberg. And he's also, out of Roman Yossi and Matt Duchene, the youngest. So he's the guy whose game is still kind of in the beginning of his prime.
Mhm.
So to me,
Yeah.
Forsberg that was my pick for this.
Mhm.
And I certainly understand why he's second on the list as well.
Yeah, I can too. Although here's what my thought was as I looked at this list. You look at somebody like Matt Duchene and Philip Forsberg, and if you can keep those two healthy, I think they play so well off of each other. Hopefully, I think we saw it last season, and I really think there's no reason to expect we don't. That if they can continue to play that well individually, the other player is going to benefit from that. And Roman Yossi is Roman Yossi, and he may be kind of at the top of the bell curve when it comes to age in the league. But I think Yossi can have a really good season too. I don't think For as surprising as it was to have this many players have really good seasons last season, it all made sense that
Mm.
they had the seasons they did. It didn't, none of them felt like a fluke, which is what gives me hope that all four of these guys could again have really strong seasons. I don't think that last season was necessarily a fluke in any way for any of them. So I think it's encouraging, and it's nice to kind of see people across the board think that all four of them in one way or another have some potential.
Yeah. Matt Duchene, 16.7%. Roman Yossi was dead last, 13.
Surprising.
Surprising, but I get it. Like, that was kind of a historic season. He's still going to
Yeah.
be one of the best defensemen in the NHL, but I get that.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the third question. Other than Colorado, who do you see as the Preds' biggest competition in the Central? The choices we gave you were St. Louis, Minnesota, and Dallas. And we also gave you a thing for something else. No one, absolutely zero people picked this someone else about the state of the Central Division. 53.8%, the Blues. And
Yeah.
hard to disagree with that, Anne.
I was actually surprised by it only because I think that it's right. I think the Blues are going to be one of the top teams in the Central. I just feel like it's the team nobody's talking about. I feel like everybody is kind of rumbling about the Minnesota Wild. How are they going to be without Kevin Fiala? The Dallas Stars, people just talk about the Dallas Stars, But St. Louis Blues, I think even last season, they were quietly very good.
Yeah.
But a lot of people weren't talking about them. So it was kind of surprising to me to see the Blues garner 53% of the vote in this, because just in general, the Central Division hasn't paid a lot of attention to them, and they've been good.
Yeah. And they're one of those teams, and we've said this over and over again, that they were the team that looked the best against the Colorado Avalanche in the playoffs, like looked the most threatening. And I'm
Yes.
including the Tampa Bay Lightning in that too. So it feels like St. Louis, obviously there's questions for them too, especially in terms of depth scoring. Can guys like Jordan Kyrou and Robert Thomas keep taking that next step?
Mhm.
Will some other guys like Vladimir Tarasenko kind of get on the wrong edge of 30? So that is going to kind of be the
Mhm.
the big question mark there. Minnesota Wild was the second most with 38.5%. Dallas Stars 7.7%. Yeah, not a lot of people buying in the Stars this year. Sorry.
Not a lot of hype
Sorry,
there.
Jane Lewis from Locked On Stars. We still love you.
Yes. Yeah. So let's do one more here real quick before we take another quick break. But okay, which new Preds addition do you think will be the biggest missing piece compared to last season's team? We had three options here: Nino Niederreiter, Ryan McDonough, Kevin Lankinen. Okay, I'm thinking some recency bias on this one, but 80% said Nino Niederreiter is going to be the biggest missing piece. Ryan McDonough, 15.7%, Lankinen, 4.3%. What do you think about that?
Well, this was, to put out in perspective, this was the biggest landslide of any of the polls we had. And I agree, there's probably some recency bias there. But look, if Nino Niederreiter gets to 20 goals, again, that is a low bar. All he has to do is get to 20 goals this season. I will say he is a successful signing for what the Predators wanted him to do. So I agree. I think he's going to be the biggest difference maker from last year. Just because I think the Preds didn't really have any of that depth scoring, obviously, because Luke Cunnin and Ellie Tolvanen kind of underwhelmed. So if he is able to go on that second line and add some depth scoring, the Predators are a much more dangerous team. Although I will say the wild card on this list is Kevin Lankinen, Anne. Because you kind of mentioned it earlier when we were talking about UC Saros's, whether he was going to be able to reproduce his year or not. If Kevin Lankinen is able to have even like a decent season, like a decent to solid season, that changes kind of how the Predators can manage their goalies a little bit, because all of a sudden, UC Saros can play in fewer games. He can have maybe about 5 to 8 games more rest this year than he did last year. And I do think that is going to be a difference. I think that keeps his longevity up because, like you had last year where you were kind of having to play Yossi Saros almost every game because you didn't trust your backups. That I do think is a difference. So I wouldn't count out Kevin Lankinen, who is last in the poll, but I think he is kind of the guy that maybe make a huge difference.
I agree with what you're saying. I think the same is probably true for McDonough. And I feel like McDonough gets robbed in this poll because statistically, I'm not sure there's really a good way to prove how important he is. But I think the addition of McDonough 100% changes the defensive depth that the Predators have. And that one addition has changed so much about the decor. So for me, I get the Nino, get it. And I agree with you about Lankinen as well. But I also let's not underestimate how important McDonough is either. So I don't feel like you can go 100, you just can't go too far wrong on this one. But again, like you said, Niederreiter by a landslide on this one was the missing piece. So we've got a couple more poll questions that we want to get to. You all had big feelings and big votes, so we're going to break down a couple more questions. But first, want to thank you for making Locked On Predators your first listen today. When we wrap up, you're going to want to go and make your second listen Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Steal and Flip bring you the fantasy edge and keep you ahead of the competition with daily updates of news, analysis, and advice Monday through Friday. You can get Locked On Fantasy Hockey available on YouTube, Audacity, anywhere you get your favorite podcasts.
All right, Ann. So let's go back to some more fan poll questions. Number 5, which depth pred do you think is most poised for a breakout season? The options we gave you were Cody Glass, Kiefer Sherwood, Ellie Tolvanen, and Jeremy Lauzon. And we have a dead tie.
I love that.
A dead tie, each with 43.1%, Cody Glass and Ellie Tolvanen. Hard to disagree with that. Also feels like their seasons may be a little bit intertwined as well.
Yes, and I can understand both of them. I think everybody, just from a purely emotional, non-statistical standpoint, I think everybody is pulling for Cody Glass. I mean, you just can't not love Cody Glass. But I think the same thing is true for Ellie Tolvanen because so much about Tolvanen's game last season was good, except the scoring. I think him getting a goal in one of the first 2 games, I think it was the first game, was a good omen. But I agree with you. I think these two could spend a lot of the season together. And if one of them kind of gets going well out of the gate, the other is going to benefit from it. I will say I'm a little disappointed in the underwhelming response for Kiefer Sherwood. I think a lot of people's expectation is this is somebody who came into camp, looked really good for a couple weeks, and is going to prove to, just not be, that's not really his game, that he just peaked at a good time and he's going to disappear and, ride off into the sunset. I don't think that's going to happen, but I didn't vote. So, and Jeremy Lauzon with 3.4% of the vote. Expectations maybe not as high for Jeremy Lauzon. I don't know. How do you feel about these depth players? How do you feel about this poll? Do you feel like they got it?
Well, to go back on Sherwood, well, first off, the answer, I think they nailed it, that it was either going to be Glass or Tolvanen. With Sherwood, I think there's just kind of that doubt. It's like he had a really good camp and a really good preseason and looked good in some of those preseason games on the second line. But there's a difference between able to, have a hot run stretch and do it for 82 games a year. And I think maybe that's some of the doubt of where Kiefer Sherwood comes in. But, it's hard to argue against Glass or Tolvanen. I think Glass is maybe the one that's maybe a little bit more poised to have the breakout season just because, I feel like Ellie Tolvanen, the expectations for him are going to be a little bit higher just because he's been here for 3 years or so. It's funny. I think Cody Glass is going to have, maybe the more bigger jump from this year to last year. But let's also not forget that there's still kind of, mentioning Sherwood, kind of uncertainty with that other second line winger spot. And so if Ellie Tolvanen has a good run of play with Cody Glass, maybe gets moved around a little bit and jumps up to the top line or the top 6 role, he might be able to kind of build off of what he did last year, maybe have a 40 to 50 point season. So statistic wise, maybe Ellie Tolvanen, but in terms, I think, of improvement from, last year to this year, it's got to be Cody Glass.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. Speaking of young players, this next question, you just were poking the bear here. So, hot topic in Nashville, Phil Tomasino starting the season in Milwaukee. We asked, do you think Phil Tomasino will be back full-time on the Preds NHL roster this season? Your options were yes before Christmas, yes by the deadline, yes by playoff time, no, not quite his time. I was kind of surprised by these results. 50%, 50.8% said yes, we're going to see Tomasino back full-time by Christmas. 25.4% said by the deadline, he'll be back into the lineup. 15.3% said by playoff time. 8.5% said no, not quite his time. What's your take on this?
Well, first off, I mean, you and I didn't get a chance to talk about this, but look, Phil Tomasino going to the AHL is what it is.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as big of a deal as people are making. And I think the circumstances, and John Hines kind of hit on it in his press conference when he was asked about this. He kind of hit on this a little bit where he's just saying, look, we suddenly have a lot more depth this year. And that gives us, the luxury of being a little bit more patient for Tom. Where it's like last year, it's like he had to be on the fourth line because he was,
they needed a body.
Good players. Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, I think the Preds long-term are going to be a little bit more patient with him. I would say maybe yes by the deadline.
Really?
My guess. I know a lot of people are saying yes by Christmas just because a lot of people feel that he can jump in and play that role. I think the only reason that happens is if somebody like Kiefer Sherwood or Cole Smith really don't perform. It's kind of like you remember the Tommy Novak thing from last year where he came out early, won his spot, had a really hot start, and then as the year went on, you kind of became like, okay, this guy, needs more seasoning in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
I think if they do that with, Sherwood or if Cole Smith, simmers down a little bit, then I think that opens the door. If Phil Tomasino has a really good start in Milwaukee, that's the caveat. I just don't think the Preds are going to rush him. Like, I think Predators are going to kind of take a longer term approach. I think they would rather have him in a perfect world, maybe spend a full year in Milwaukee, kind of be the guy and maybe come up for like spot starts, in case of injuries or something like that. So I think you're going to see them be a little bit more patient with him. If he's back this year, if things, shake out, long-term injuries and stuff like that, I would say by the deadline would be my guess. What's your guess?
I do really think we're going to see Phil Tomasino back with the Predators. Full time is the caveat that gives me pause. And I agree with you. I think we'll see him before Christmas. Will he be back as a full-time roster position before Christmas? I don't know that that's true. And I agree with you. A lot depends on injury. A lot depends on how some of these new faces kind of shake out long term. But everybody, I think, just needs to take a deep breath on Phil Tomasino. It's going to be okay. Look at Cody Glass. One of the best things for Glass's game was a year in Milwaukee. So, this is not, nobody has spoken fire and brimstone over Tomasino or his future with the franchise. So, I'm okay. I'm okay if it's by Twitter the deadline. Well, I mean, Twitter has spoken. Yeah. So, no, I would agree. I think full-time by the deadline. Full-time by the deadline. Yeah.
Yeah. Hard to disagree with that. Question number 7. What do you think is the biggest question mark facing the Preds right now? We offered up depth scoring, too many penalties, defense in front of Saros, and team depth for injuries. By that one, we just meant like, hey, if somebody gets hurt, there's not anybody that can really fill that person's shoes. 63% of the vote and said too many penalties.
Can I get a witness? Can I get a witness?
Yeah, amen to that one.
I mean, it is, and I know that everybody in Nashville is hypersensitive to seeing the arm go up because it was such an issue last season. So I'm trying to be patient with it, but I will tell you the penalties have, I mean, you cannot improve your lineup, you cannot improve, all these aspects of your team and just be like, well, let's see if penalties fall where they may. So I would agree, 63% too many penalties.
Not exactly a smooth start in the two goal series games.
Come
on. Yeah.
Killing me. I don't know. Depth scoring 29.6%, team depth for injuries 5.6, and I would 1.9% defense in front of Saros, and I think, you know what? Not sure who the 1.9% is, but let's hear it for defense in front of Saros, because I think that's something that the Predators fans maybe haven't had as much confidence in. But I think, again, the addition of McDonough makes defense a whole thing. So yay for defense.
Yeah, I think that was the one from last year that I think is probably the most fixed. And then team depth for injuries, 5.6%. Yeah, a lot of people, feel a little bit more confident about depth this year. So, I guess there's more people to step up. Yeah, sure. Good job, depth. And last but not least, which that was literally how the question starts, last but not least, what's your confidence level in the direction of the Preds? All in? Cautiously optimistic? Not quite sold, but we'll see. Or let's burn the entire thing down. 66 points or 66% cautiously optimistic.
I mean, was it Nashville Predators Twitter that answered this question? Because in general, not necessarily a cautiously optimistic vibe on Predators Twitter, just saying. But I do think the Predators did some really important things in the offseason. And I think that they had, for a short condensed training camp, I think they had some real standout players. So I like this. I like the positive vibe. The 2% who said this ain't it, like, what do you people want? What do you want?
It's only 2%. Like
only 2%.
So,
and maybe they're just in general discontents, because I'm like I'm not, can't promise anything, but I'm like, what do you want from these people?
Yeah, I think there is a certain group that it's like if it's not built the way they would want to do it, or the people that aren't there are the ones that then it's like, oh, then the team doesn't know what they're doing, and really look at it from kind of a it's either you do what they do, or you're a train wreck. And I think that's part of it. And I think people are just generally upset by Phil Tomasino maybe going down to not necessarily him going down, but who stayed up, over him. I think that was maybe some of the discontent, but I would say cautiously optimistic. Obviously, I don't think any of us are like all in on it.
Right.
16 points or 16% of you guys. I think it's going to be kind of one of those things where this season's going to tell you a lot. Is there something there to keep building on? Or is this kind of a group of sometimes overachievers that doesn't really have a real chance? I think this season's going to tell you a lot about the direction of the team. And by the time the season ends, we're going to have probably a lot of answers on what direction the Predators should go in.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think this is a really critical season because the big holes, they've addressed big holes. Can they compensate for little issues? There's a lot that the Predators need to prove this season with the roster, the way they've constructed it, and with leadership. So, but I am cautiously optimistic. Cautiously optimistic.
Famous last words.
I don't want to cry at the end of this season.
I don't either.
No.
So we'll see, and we get our first look at the Predators at home ice tonight, 7 o'clock puck drop against the Dallas Stars. Again, we will have a full recap tomorrow on Locked On Predators. And where can the people find your work?
You can find my work at InsideThePreds.com, and you can find me on Twitter at ANK_Mama on Ice.
You can find me at ontheforecheck.com. Follow me on Twitter _NS Morgan. Also, be sure to subscribe to our shows. You can find us free on any podcast, whatever, the thing you
podcast
listen.
Platform. Yep.
Yeah. Subscribe on that. Google, Odyssey, Amazon, Spotify. Just keep naming podcasts until you find one that you use. Subscribe on that. If you're watching this on YouTube, also be sure to hit that subscribe button and hit the bell notification as well. That way you'll be the first to know when there is new Locked On Preds content out. That is going to do it for us on today's show. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We will be back tomorrow with Preds Stars Recap.